ain't mine.
So,
is it recording?
yeah.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
So we just watched Ghost World. It's a very spooky movie, good for Halloween. There was shockingly few ghosts in the movie.
I mean, the lead actress was really pale.
Yeah, they both were.
So she was kind of ghostly.
They both were. So, Michael, why are we talking about this movie from 1997?
Did you look that up?
No, I didn't. I'm guessing it's around there, though.
Why did we pick this movie? Well, it was going to be between this and The Master and Scanner Darkly.
Yes. Movies that I really liked when I was younger, or in the past, that left impacts on me that I wanted to share with my critical friend Michael here, who's not Bobby.
Well, okay, actually, so I was going to ask you that earlier. I do want to hear why this movie made your top 10 list of movies, because I thought it was really good. I really liked it, but I put it in a category with like Juno.
Okay.
You know, like, oh,
right.
that was good. It was really interesting.
Yeah.
I'll think about it later.
Yeah.
But I don't necessarily have to see it again. I kind of feel like I got all the substance out of it on one viewing.
I think part of what it is it's kind of that class of like indie movies that came out in the early 2000s, where they're all a little bit quirky and the colors are kind of popping and they're all kind of comedy dramas, and some are about spunky young girls who are different and they buck the system. But I always liked just that aesthetic.
All right, keep going.
And that's it. But it's, as I've gotten older, in a lot of those movies, like, that was like a genre for a little while. And they all, like, Little Miss Sunshine and this and that.
Yeah, even Napoleon Dynamite kind of falls in that category, I think.
And this has that aesthetic that I did like when it was first coming out, but it just kind of resonates with me.
Hi.
Hello.
Do you remember me?
Sure.
You know, you're like the only person in this world that I can count on. Because no matter what, I know you'll always be here.
Well, that's what you think.
So in terms of like general, aesthetics, it's very similar to those movies. But whereas those movies are very like, I don't want to say paper thin, but they've got very straightforward like plots and themes. This one, I've seen this movie a couple times straight through, and then I'll just sometimes go back to watch scenes of it. And there are moments where I get confused about what they're trying to say, and I don't know exactly, and then I think I figured it out. So I remember when I first saw this, and I was like, I think I watched it on IFC, Independent Film Channel, and they would just replay it all the time. And I'd be like, I know how indie movies work. I know what they're going to say in this art scene.
Well, these are all valid comments, but I think we should see if the artist has anything to bring to this.
Well, I found this when I was doing some research, and I discovered that Cook's chicken used to be called coon chicken. So I decided to do my project based on this discovery as kind of a comment on racism and how it's whitewashed over in our culture.
Did you actually do this painting?
Well, no, it's more of a found art object.
And how do you think this addresses the subject of racism?
It's complicated. I guess I'm trying to show how racism used to be more out in the open, and now it's hidden or something.
And how do you think an image like this helps us to see that?
I'm not sure. I guess because when we see something like this, you know, it seems really shocking, and we have to wonder why it's so shocking.
And then it would kind of like change it on me and be like, oh, is the fact that, you know, spoilers for the whole film, but is the fact that Enid brought in this, you know, piece of art has a racist depiction, is this a good decision by her? Is this a bad decision? Is it, should we be seeing the irony in that it's applauded? Or is there truth in the fact that this should be applauded, whereas the other art is insincere? So it has these questions that keep me going back to this film, where it seems like it's saying things that are a little bit deeper than maybe other films of similar ilk.
Yeah, I think the movie has a lot to say, but what I appreciated about the whole time was that it was never on the nose. Like,
right.
The whole time I was kind of waiting, like, where's the one-dimensional character going to show up? Is it going to be kind of like, for some reason, maybe it's because I wanted to watch The Graduate, but I kind of was thinking about The Graduate. And The Graduate's a movie where, like, the theme is kind of in every shot, and in every camera, you know, every setup of every shot is, like, the theme is coming.
Here's what it is.
Suburbia and modern America is bad. But this movie was never on the nose, and the closest it got to that was the art teacher.
Right.
And I remember when her character was first introduced, I was like, okay, here's going to be the kind of avant-garde art teacher. But even that, like, her character ended up being surprisingly multidimensional by the end. And that whole, like, whenever I was kind of gearing up for the movie to be too heavy-handed, it wasn't. And so... Yeah. I'll also say, I felt really conflicted with the character of Enid throughout the whole movie.
Oh my God. You guys, I can't believe we made it.
Yeah, you graduated high school. How totally amazing. What are you doing here, Melora?
My acting workshop is across the street from here. I'm just on my break.
Well, we won't keep you.
It's really quite something to see you all grown up like this, Enid. I'd love to know what you're doing now. I can't help but feel I had some small part in how you turned out. What are you studying? You were always such a smart little girl.
I'm taking a remedial high school art class for fuck-ups and retards.
And this is actually something I like about the movie. It never really paints her as the good guy, and it really paints her as, like, the bad guy. She's just a very fleshed out, multidimensional young girl. And I was kind of waiting to see, like, well, what does the movie think of Enid? Is the movie going to be like, the movie's pro Enid, she's the good guy, or is the movie going to be like, no, Enid had to learn a lesson? Right. And it never really even resolved that. It just kind of left it like, no, here's a young girl going through her shit.
And this might be, you know, to answer your question a little bit more, I always finish this movie with, like, a pit of sadness in me. And we were both just kind of commenting after we watched the movie, like, it ends in this downer way where you just kind of have to sit and think about it. That very few films, like, really, like, it kind of feels like you just got punched by the movie. And it's not even like, you see how bad, you know, government can be or whatever. It's nebulous in how it's bad, but it's kind of ratcheting up, like, things are falling apart around the characters, and then it ends on this note where there's no real resolution. And so it ends up with me kind of just, like, thinking on it and dwelling on it and on the characters and who made the right choice and who made the wrong choice and why did Enid make the decisions she did. And
I think I was thinking about this for a little bit right after the movie ended. I think part of what gave it this kind of sadness, because it left me feeling like a pit in my stomach. Like, okay, so what I think gave it that sad feeling at the end was the Steve Buscemi plot. Right. Because the way the movie ends for her, you're kind of like, yeah, she screwed everything up. She's got kind of a bad attitude, and she's wrestling with that, and she's kind of wrestling with this, do I want to normalize? Do I want to become more like a member of society, or do I want to, like, double down on my quirkiness and weirdness? Right. And that's maybe not resolved, but I kind of felt like with her character at the end of the movie, I was like, well, she's 18. Like
it'll be okay.
Yeah, it'll be okay. She'll figure it out. And
Yeah.
even with the last shot with her going off on the bus, which now that I think about it is kind of Graduate-esque.
Yeah.
I don't know if there are any other comparisons with that film. It's just on my mind.
Thematically, it's very similar.
Yeah.
A person who's a recent graduate trying to kind of figure out the world.
Wait, yeah, there's actually a lot.
There's a lot, yeah.
A lot of parallels.
Recent graduate trying to figure out the world, not fitting in normal society, trying to buck trends, and then trying to go back and maybe I do need to be normal.
Seeing the world around them as vapid and kind of soul crushing.
Right.
We're all so proud of you. Proud. What are you going to do now?
I was going to go upstairs for a minute.
Oh, I meant with your future. Your life.
Well, that's a little hard to say.
You could even enroll in the winter quarter. You could live here and go to the city college part-time and, I don't know, still get a job if you want.
Look at me, I'm not even listening to a word you're saying.
And then being like, well, I kind of need the rest of the world too. One scene that like ended up feeling very poignant to me this time around is there's the little sequence where she goes, dyes her hair green, she tries to be a punk for a day, dyes it back, says, okay, no, that's just another version of me kind of faking it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you kind of listen to this whole old blues song. I think it's called Devil Got My Woman.
Something like that.
Yeah, and I've heard that song since then. And I've wondered about that. I was like, okay, so is it that there is true art out there, but it's harder to find? Or is there something about how kind of real and sad blues is, where it's not hiding behind any sort of facade?
So there's that theme of like authenticity. She's looking for authenticity. And I felt like the first half of the movie explored that with a lot of like innocent wonder of like, well, I know it's not Nikes and blue jeans.
Right.
I know authenticity.
Those kids at my high school aren't authentic, but we're a little bit more.
Right. Yeah. That was like, if there was any theme that was a little heavy-handed, it was that at the beginning. But even quick note back to the heavy-handed thing. Even that, I was kind of asking myself like, is this getting preachy? Is it heavy-handed?
Right.
But then I thought, well, wait a minute. Think back 10 years ago when I was in high school. I thought I knew everything, and I thought my views on things were very profound.
Right.
And so the fact that these girls had views that were like very profound, I thought kind of made sense. It wasn't like Degrassi, where it was like, no, these kids are really profound.
They really do know what's going on.
These are the real human issues. It was like, I don't mean to shit on Degrassi, but
right.
But no, it kept it really believable. But on the exploration of authenticity in the first half, I thought it was, and maybe this is just because it lined up with my personal taste, but I thought it explored that really well when it was like, she discovered in this guy who was like a record enthusiast, you know, which today everyone's got vinyl records,
right?
And it's a huge craze, but in the time the movie was made, it was like, no, this is really a guy who's trying to like dig up the past and trying to keep something alive, even the gritty parts, as we see with like the racist imagery,
right?
And I felt like there was on the part of Enid, there was a really genuine encounter with a bygone era that was truly more authentic. And again, that might just be because I agree with that. I'd be like, yes, that stuff is more authentic, and you know, Delta blues, one man and a guitar is better than the fake rock band that got on the stage.
And did you notice they're like singing like, you know, clearly songs that are about like the slave experience, but it's like all these white guys, and it's like a super sped up version.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Are you ready to boogie? Cause we gonna play some authentic way down in the Delta blues. So get ready to rock your world.
okay, so just taking it and turning it into something else isn't authentic. So in a lot of these moments, and one thing that I was like, I don't know how well I'm going to like enjoy like moments that I liked maybe when I was younger, where it's Enid and Scarlett Johansson's character just being sarcastic and ironic about everything. I was like, is that going to grate on me, like, as these characters know better? But it doesn't, because it still feels like it's not acknowledging that as any kind of true thing either. Like, that's just another facade that they need to like kind of grow out of before they can be sincere.
Let's prank call this guy.
Let's prank call this guy. He wants to be in love. How lame is that? When it's like, no, that's still you just putting on a facade. That's just another layer of irony, and it doesn't make you more sincere just by hating on other things. In some ways, it makes you worse.
Yeah, I actually liked when their initial encounter with Steve Buscemi.
Yeah.
When they set him up on the fake blind date and they want to humiliate him. You have the character Josh is like, it sounds kind of cruel.
Right.
And you can tell that even the characters in the scene kind of have mixed feelings about it.
Right.
I at least I felt like that goes back to what I was saying before, that the movie always felt multidimensional. But it also didn't, even with communicating that point, it didn't make them seem cartoonishly evil.
Right.
There were times that in the movie that Enid was almost unbearably bratty.
Yeah.
And even then, those were other scenes where I kind of asked myself, I'm like, oh, is this also kind of like, is the movie making her a little too unbelievably nasty?
Right.
But even then I was kind of like, no, that's like
fairly realistic.
That's just like high schoolers. That's like a teenage, I can totally see a teenage girl just being a real...
Yeah.
Not that I'm boys could do it too.
Or boy.
Or anyone.
Yeah.
There's a lot to be said for Enid's character of like,
right.
You know, this is a very conflicted teenage girl of, you know, she want to be, she's kind of grappling with the world around her and maybe kind of maturing in her view of the world around her. Maybe people aren't so awful in a way, and maybe she's not so like high and mighty, or maybe she doesn't have everything figured out. So there's a lot to be said about the character of Enid. I mean, you could honestly write like an essay on just the character of Enid.
Sure.
What is that?
Right.
You know, what's she grappling with? What do you think of Scarlett Johansson's character? Was it Becca?
Something like that. Yeah. It's interesting with her as a foil for Enid, right? Because
that's the word that came to my mind. Was she's kind of a foil.
She starts in kind of the same exact place, but then as time marches on, she kind of figures out, no, I can carve out my own little part of the world here, where Enid can't. And are we supposed to see that as like there's just some flaw in Enid, or is there a weakness in Scarlett Johansson's character?
I think it's the former. I think you're supposed to see that there's a flaw in Enid.
Right.
Because that's another place where this movie just really, maybe it's just because I'm so cynical, but this movie just kept pleasantly surprising me with how nuanced it remained, how multi-dimensional. But a bad way for her character to be a foil would have been to have all these scenes where she's like, Enid, I don't know why you can't just adjust, or why can't you just get a job and be normal, and I'm being normal, and you have a scene where she's dating like a preppy guy, and she's like, come on, can't you just get it together? Like, I think she wasn't a foil in the sense of like, just look at the contrast between the girl who gave in and the girl who stayed conflicted, but it's kind of like Scarlett Johansson's character was, this is the girl who had just adjusted well.
Right.
Like she stayed kind of a little weird.
Right.
She didn't really lose that. Like, I don't...
In a lot of ways, she doesn't change very much in the story. She just gets a job and she figures out that she can kind of live this life. And it's not like she gives up her whole personality to be a part of regular society.
Right. You don't... at least I didn't feel like you saw scenes that were trying to say like, look, she sold out, or she gave up her, you know, her true self or whatever. I almost wonder if someone would... I wouldn't be surprised if there was a boardroom discussion about this film. And
we need a funny guy.
Or if at some point they were like, well, so what is this movie? Is it a drama? Is it a dark comedy? And this was kind of the era when dark comedies were big.
Right.
Think like Dogma.
American Beauty won the Oscar, which seems so bizarre for a movie like that to win the Oscar.
American Beauty, which I think I've heard people describe as a dark comedy.
Yeah,
which is
dark comedy moments.
This is my friend, Angela Hayes.
Okay. Good to meet you. You were also good tonight. Very precise.
Thanks. Yeah, nice to meet you, Angela. Honey. Oh, I am so proud of you. You know, I watched you very closely. You didn't screw up once.
Because you said that the graphic novel is more of just like her going through the town.
Yes.
Like kind of...
So the graphic novel's a lot less. There's not so much of a through line of the plot. It's just here are these friends in high school, and then here's like these little episodic chapters of people she meets. So like there's a moment like there's a Satanist in the coffee shop. There's like that whole moment's in the graphic novel. But if I remember correctly, Seymour's just another guy. And they don't have this relationship, and they never sleep together.
It's more like
little vignettes.
It's more vignettes.
Should we leave a note?
Yeah, you got a pen?
Yeah.
Dear Josh, we came by to fuck you, but you were not home. Therefore, you are gay. Signed, Tiffany and Amber.
You're gonna leave that?
Why not?
This movie struck me as being very unself-conscious.
Yeah, it's just, look at these characters. Sometimes they have moments of clarity, and sometimes they're stuck in their own mistakes. And on a very basic level, it's a very clear coming-of-age plot. People get older, friendships grow apart, and sometimes you end up being a very different person from who you started off as, you know? And you learn a little bit about the world, and then it's not quite the black and white thing you thought it was. So I think that holds the film down, is just like, you can just enjoy it as that, and then here's this little, slice of life from late 90s. But then it has all of these other things going on that are interesting, and it has such a downer ending that I think anything that has a downer ending makes you kind of be like, wait, is this an indictment of something? Are they saying something is wrong about this? Stop.
Yes, so I actually want to go back to that.
Okay.
And Norm, the guy at the bus stop, who was like, there's something kind of mystical happening there, and that's actually kind of not to do exactly what I said I wanted to avoid right now, but that is kind of where you're like, oh, I know it's called Ghost World. There's kind of a thing there. But before we go down that road, I want to ask, you had just kind of described the film as, and I think this is the closest thing you could say there is to a point of the movie, is it is just, well, this is just a coming of age story, and it maybe doesn't have like a perfect resolve at the end, but it is about like a young woman grappling, and things are changing, and expectations
She's figuring out how the world actually works.
Right,
yeah.
She's figuring out how it actually works. But that's like, and that is most of the movie.
Yeah.
But then what do you do with the whole Steve Buscemi thing? Because the Seymour character was very well developed.
Yes.
He had a lot of screen time, and her relationship with him
is kind of the heart of the movie.
It's kind of the heart of the movie, and I don't know. Can you speak to that at all?
That's where the film keeps coming back to me as this kind of perplexing story, where it never makes Steve Buscemi look like he's this secretly cool guy. Like, Enid says he's cool, but it's kind of because he's lame that he's cool.
I don't know. I kind of like him. He's the exact opposite of everything I really hate. In a way, he's such a clueless dork. He's almost kind of cool.
That guy's many things, but he's definitely not cool. This would be good, but there's no kitchen.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
Not really.
Forget it. I can't explain it.
He's authentically lame.
He's
He's unapologetically into his hobbies, and
he is who he is. He doesn't try to conform to anything else.
He also hates himself.
And by how the movie ends, I remember the first time watching it, I was like it ends with him in this horrible place. He started not in a great place, but then he ends even worse, and like his mom is picking him up, and he's even been like he's probably never going to trust a woman ever again, or at least he was like kind of trying before this.
Yeah.
So what? I don't know exactly. I mean, we might be kind of overthinking it a little bit. It could be basic movie karma, you know, similar to Mrs. Robinson. They've both done something wrong, and things, you know, they need a kind of comeuppance. The characters who've been with these younger characters who are vulnerable. So what's the word for human beings who hate other human beings?
Misanthropes?
Is this a misanthropic movie?
Are you asking, is it a film about misanthropy, or is the film itself kind of misanthropic?
Is the film itself. Because I think some of the characters clearly have dislike of humans in general.
And you're asking whether or not that carries over more broadly to the film itself.
To the film itself, to maybe the goals of the creators.
So it's almost like you're asking, is the film cynical?
Yeah.
I would say no, except for that ending with Steve Buscemi.
Except for that ending.
Again, is why I think that's the part that weakened it, was if it just ends with her going off on the bus by herself.
And 99% of humanity.
Well, I can't relate to humanity either, but I don't think it's completely hopeless.
Well, it's not completely hopeless for you. I'm not even in the same universe as those creatures back there.
It's kind of like, she's 18. She's gonna...
It'll be okay.
And she looks so young in the film, too. The actress, Thora Birch. Thora Birch. She looks very young. And she kind of like... Yeah, she's got a bad attitude, but she's kind of had like a rude awakening about that. And you know that she's going to try and...
She's learned a little bit about how that
she's
works.
At least going to like think about it and kind of reflect. And it has changed her in some way. And I'm kind of glad that we as the audience don't get to stick around long enough to see that come to fruition.
Right.
I don't feel like I needed to. That wasn't the point. But yeah, with her just kind of going off on the bus by herself, I don't think it's cynical. What do you think?
No, I don't think so either. But we mentioned briefly earlier how kind of more metaphorical, surreal moments in top. That's a lot. In the movie are.
That's also a lot.
We need this after Ghost World.
I know. This movie makes you drink and smoke.
I made Michael watch it and said, "You're Steve Buscemi, okay?"
I identified a lot with Steve Buscemi. When he was like, my favorite music is like blues, roots, jazz, and ragtime. I was like, oh,
We need to find a place where you can go to meet women who share your interests.
Well, maybe I don't want to meet someone who shares my interests. I hate my interests.
Yeah. Just list your 5 main interests in order of importance.
I'd have to put traditional jazz, blues, and then ragtime at the top of the list.
Right,
then...
so let's just say music. That way we only use up 1.
All right.
Oh no! This could be you! But the guy on the bus. So I've gone into things. That guy on the bus is also in the original graphic novel, and the graphic novel ends in a similar way.
Okay.
But what did you get out of that? How did you interpret that?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, because that is what I wanted to come back to. Was, you know, we had asked earlier, why is this movie called Ghost World? And the way the answer is like, well, because she kind of feels like disconnected from the world. Sure. Like she's kind of aloof and removed and doesn't find it has her place. So it's kind of like she's the ghost, maybe. Right. There's one reading. But then you have this old guy who's like, kind of, this like bus picks him up at the end. Yeah. And the
bus it's a defunct bus that no one comes. It doesn't really go anywhere. And this man's just always there waiting for the bus.
Yeah, Norm, he's always at the bus stop.
Yeah.
And she kind of has this like weird connection with him. It's not an attachment. Like he's never really a character.
No.
And she has this kind of like attachment to him, or she just like interacts with him when no one else will.
Yeah.
and then he gets picked up by a bus, which you notice is like an old-timey bus.
Sure.
And I think you can even see that the driver was wearing like a driver's suit and cap. Like,
right.
And so when she watches him get picked up and it pulls away, I was almost like, did she just see a ghost? Is that supposed to be like a supernatural thing in the film? But then when she got on it, I was kind of like, well, what do I do with that? Like,
right.
And maybe it's both and. Maybe it was kind of like, yes, there is kind of like a...
It can be a metaphor and also be what literally happened to this character.
Yeah, it was... Yeah, exactly. But that is where the movie kind of extended beyond itself.
Yeah.
It was kind of like you just watched a very realistic, multi-dimensional, that's my word of the day, I guess.
Yeah.
But you just watched this very, very, very realistic, very compelling, kind of teen grappling with maturity story. But now it's not just that. Like, so I think we had maybe talked earlier about how the movie wasn't really on the nose with anything.
Right.
But I don't think that means it didn't necessarily have a point it was trying to communicate.
Sure. Yeah.
And so to go back to your earlier question too, is the movie misanthropic? Is it cynical? I don't think so, but I think it does still have a point it's trying to make beyond itself. Like the story about Enid says something.
Right. I wouldn't say it's misanthropic. I can understand that reading of it, but I've always just gotten so much joy out of saying it, and you never really see characters really
joy
out of it. Well, kind of, just knowing that these people exist, and like we're gonna spend an hour and 50 minutes focusing on the Seymours of the world, and we're not gonna make him a punching bag or a comic character, but like here's a movie about this guy. You know, there's plenty of Seymours out there. Or we're just going to give you an accurate depiction of this. Or like a girl like Enid. Like, I was trying to think, I was like, even Juno's like cooler than Enid. And like, you don't really see Enids in movies either. It's like either she's the punk who knows she's the punk, but like the girl who like dyes her hair and then is like, what the fuck am I doing? And then like undyes it. And so I get a lot of joy just from like watching the movie and being happy it exists. So I don't think it's inherently cynical. But there is something about it that seems to not have a lot of hope at the same time in the rest of the world. And maybe that's where the Seymour ending comes in. And I mean, I can tell you one interpretation of the bus that's probably going to be depressing. You can probably guess it at this point.
Kill herself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that when I saw it.
Right.
I was kind of like, the first time you see the bus, it seems like it's pretty clearly trying to say, like, he passed away.
He passed away.
You know, he's the ghost now.
We're all worlds of ghosts in our own way.
Really, the point of the movie was everyone was ghosts.
Everyone was ghosts. It's like the Bruce Willis twist, but like everyone.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I thought about that when she, he gets on and he's seems like it's trying to say, well, he's dead. And then she gets on it and it's like, oh, she killed herself.
Yeah.
But they didn't build that up throughout the rest of the movie, I didn't think.
So I mean, in terms of the she killed herself interpretation, there is like thoughts behind it that seem to indicate that. And I went into the movie rewatching it this time being like, let me see if I can notice anything. Like the first reference they have to Seymour, they say he should kill himself. And then there's another reference to him committing suicide, or like, maybe I should just kill myself. And those kind of stood out, especially as the first one. Like, that's what Scarlett Johansson's character says he should do. And then there is that thing, it's this weird effect, like this bus that comes out of another world to take him away, to take the old man away. He's sitting there waiting for death, and then Enid decides to, take the express lane to also go and die when it's not her time, but she just decides, me and the world, I guess I don't have a place in here. And that's her leaving with this little luggage as she's just committing suicide. More credence to that idea is back when the internet was more of a Wild West place, there would be like suicide comment chambers. And a lot of the language of it was similar to it, where it'd be like, if I'm waiting for the bus, that means I'm planning it. If I have a bus to catch. Now on the opposite side of it, there's Daniel Clowes and the director, who I think were told about this theory, and they're like, "What are you talking about? No, she's just going off to like find another life."
That's comforting, because as you've been talking, I've been getting very sad.
No, yeah.
I liked the character of Enid.
I like the character of Enid a lot too, and honestly, I kind of like the idea that like maybe that's what happened. But I like her enough, and death of the author and all that. But I kind of like the idea that she went out and she's 18 and she'll find her place somewhere out there, and that's what it's a metaphor, not for just giving up on the world as a whole.
Yeah, and I would almost rather bend over backwards a little bit to explain her getting on the bus,
right?
Not in terms of suicide, because like we were saying before, I feel like that if you're going to take that interpretation, then the rest of what happened in the movie gets kind of soured by it. Whereas I felt like the point of the movie wasn't to be sour.
No.
It was to be like,
is life difficult? Absolutely.
Yeah, it was to be real, but real meaning not so bad and not so good, just real. And if you say like, well, no, she killed herself, and it's like, well, now it seems like the movie was saying life's so bad.
Right, and that's, I think, where you can get into like, well, in that case, maybe it is a little bit misanthropic.
I would say if that is the right interpretation that she killed herself, I think it's a weak film.
Yeah.
If the interpretation is not that she killed herself, but rather that she set out into like the mystery of life, or the mystery of like, just.
And frankly, that's set up better in the film, because she says, my one fantasy in life is just to get on a bus and get away from everyone else.
Right, yeah.
And find my own place somewhere out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what my number one fantasy used to be?
What?
I used to think about one day just not telling anyone and going off to some random place. And I'd just disappear. And they'd never see me again.
I mean, maybe you could even say, you probably can't say this because the bus was the same bus as the guy got on, but I was going to say, maybe you could say, well, whereas he got on the bus out of this world, she got on the bus just out of this town. Like,
sure.
Like, I don't know. I'm not an art critic. I'm just a guy who watched a movie about
ghosts in a world.
And I liked the movie. I did. I guess that's my. That, like I said, I'll probably have more to say about the movie tomorrow. I'll probably have thought about it more. But my first reaction is, I'm a cynical guy. I was ready to be cynical. I was ready to be disappointed.
Yeah.
Or at least to find disappointing things.
Right.
And I found very few of those. I really liked the movie. That Enid's character was truly sympathetic.
Yeah.
Scarlett Johansson's character was not unlikable.
No.
No one was a villain, and no one was a hero, but it also doesn't mean no one was good.
Right.
And I think I think there was a lot of good in the film but in the kind of like the ordinary sense.
Yeah, and when I recommended it to you, I remember thinking, I hope Michael just doesn't see this as like a cutesy patootsy, like it's these girls who are like smarter than the rest of the world, and maybe I was just underestimating her intelligence, but like you pretty quickly saw like, oh no, there's levels. Well, you're also very cynical.
Of course you underestimated my intelligence.
But there's levels to this, and like them making fun of that also means that they're being insincere, and it's a film that I can even after watching it now, I think if somebody said, hey, do you want to watch Ghost World next week? I'd be like, I think I can watch that and still like probably get that sting emotional punch, and I can still have more to think about and more to think, what are they trying to say and what's going on with these characters. It strikes something honest in me, and the characters seem honest in a way that I don't find that often.
You can identify with the Steve Buscemi where you're just kind of in a rut indefinitely, or you could be like, yeah, maybe I've had some trouble adjusting or whatever, or maybe I'm still figuring things out, but I'm still fundamentally hopeful character.
What's interesting too is like the two different interpretations of the ending are literally opposites. It's either Enid has enough hope to get out where all of these characters are stuck, or she literally commits suicide. and maybe that's the indictment on Buscemi, is like he's got enough hope to like continue living, but he doesn't really have enough hope to like actually change his life or do anything different. And that's the interpretation I'd like to. Or else, the movie's very sad.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that goes along with what I was saying at the beginning of our discussion that I liked so much about the movie, is that it wasn't beating you over the head with a point, with a singular message. It stayed complex.
Yeah.
It always had stuff for you to think about, and it was never preachy.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like if you choose to interpret it as a movie about, if you choose to interpret it as she committed suicide, then I feel like you have to say that, well, then the movie's kind of about suicide in a way. And I think it's
feel like that.
I think its strength was that it wasn't a movie like that.
Right.
It was a very organic, multifaceted,
Yeah.
multidimensional. You know, there's a dimension out there that's only ghosts. A ghost world, if you will.
Ghost world. Good. Yeah. I think that's.
Yeah. Thank you for making me watch Ghost World.
Yeah. Thank you for watching this movie no one else will watch with me.
I'm glad.
Maybe some of you will watch Ghost World now.
Yeah. If you have to choose between The Master and Ghost World, pick Ghost World because it's half an hour shorter.
That's right.
That was our decision.
That was the final factor.
Be sure to like and subscribe.
Yeah.
Give me all your money, bitch!